Resistance. My name is Frances, and my number one mission is to help you shift the way you think so you can shift the way you feel, which ultimately shifts your behaviors so that you can live a life with more fulfillment and joy. And the more you understand yourself, the more the world around you changes. I want to do a deep dive with you into a misconception that's quite common, which is something that I hear. It's the idea that emotions are too overwhelming and too much to bear. So we're going to explore what emotions really are. Who told you they were too much anyway? Like, where did you get that belief from? And why they might overwhelm us. Then towards the end, I'll provide you, of course, with some strategies on what you can do when you're in the heat of things, that when done each and every time will inevitably reduce how you become dysregulated by your intense emotions. The reason this is a topic of discussion is because I did a webinar for the NAACP Indiana chapter, and someone asked, what can I do with the overwhelming feelings that I was experiencing? And it was hard to really explain it in such a short amount of time. So I figured, let me do a video about it. This way, more people can get access to this, because I'm sure it's something that we all think about. And I thought this would be great to do this because I've been there when my feelings were so intense. When our emotions are really intense, it's really hard for us to think clearly. It's hard for us to make the best decisions in the moment and so forth. So let's get started. One of the few things I said in my newsletter, and if you haven't subscribed, make sure that you do, was to be with emotions is to be human. Emotions have been there from the beginning of humanity. Our emotions are primal and they serve a purpose. They send signals to our brains, our hearts, and even our bodies to tell us something, which means emotions are really just feedback. And I say this a lot. It's feedback that we need to pause and actually listen to. If you find yourself emotionally overwhelmed, just know that there's nothing wrong with you. It's just telling you to pay attention. And you'll see I'll have my notes here. I always refer to my notes to kind of keep me on track. All right, so before we get into how to recognize when you're feeling overwhelmed by your emotions, I'd like to ask you first, where did you get the idea that your emotions were too much or are too much? I want you to sit with that for a moment. Ask yourself, where did you learn that from? Who told you that? And most importantly, why have you adopted this to be true for yourself? What makes you feel or think that they're too much? You most likely first heard this from your family, maybe even your friends, or someone that you're dating or partnered with. And that made you shut down. And so now when feelings become so incredibly intense for you, you don't have the tools to work through them and move them along. As a kid, I was highly sensitive. And what I found later in my adult life, that I'm a highly sensitive person, which means that I'm sensitive to other people's emotions. I'm sensitive to noise, sensitive to life, essentially. And as a kid, when there was no place for me to express those emotions, or place them somewhere, or talk to someone about them, I suppressed them. I grew up in a Caribbean household where you're not really taught how to express and process your emotions. And sometimes you don't even have someone to talk to about them to help you understand like what's going on. So again, what did I do? Like a lot of you, I suppressed my emotions. I cried privately, if I cried at all. I didn't think about them. I unhealthily distracted myself. So I couldn't feel or express. And that's why I became an emotional eater, and I ate my emotions. Well, those kinds of ways of coping have serious consequences. For me, I got hard. I grew tough layers, which at some point in my life turned into apathy. And that's a whole other story for another day. But I had to break down that old narrative, and I had to go through that process if I really wanted to have healthy, abundant relationships and work that I was passionate about. So what did I do? Aside from seeing therapists and healers, I really had to spend a lot of time reconnecting with that part of myself. So what that means for you is you can do the same. Not only can you learn to manage your emotions, but you will also welcome them as part of your existence. So take a moment when you get a chance to check out my video about core beliefs that helps you assess and explore where your beliefs come from and how to challenge them using the associated worksheet. It takes you all through the steps, and that's free for you to take and work through. Let's explore what feeling emotionally overwhelmed might look like. For instance, what goes on in your cognitive thought process? What goes on in your body, your feelings, and so forth? When you're under intense emotions, such that it becomes hard to cope with them, you'll experience quite a few things. Feeling overwhelmed by your emotions can really affect your cognitive abilities. And what I mean by cognitive abilities is just your thoughts, right? It could affect remembering, your memory. It could affect reasoning. It could affect your problem-solving skills. It could affect your thoughts, like thinking clearly. And what causes this could be one intense stressful situation, or it could be a chronic small stressors that over time overwhelm your nervous system. I mean, honestly, life can just like wear you out if you don't have the tools to move through not only what's happening outside of yourself, but most importantly, what's happening inside of yourself. Imagine constantly experiencing negative emotions like fear, anger, and guilt all of the time. And I'm sure that might be a lot of you who are watching this video. That's probably why you're watching this video, right? Here are some signs that you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by your emotions. You overreact to insignificant things. For example, like maybe you can't find a pen. This was a big deal for me. I'd overreact and get really irritated by the most insignificant things. And it's like, why? Why am I getting so flustered and frustrated by these insignificant things? And I had to really look deep into myself to find the root cause of that. Maybe you find yourself tired or like physically unwell. Maybe you're finding yourself tired or physically unwell because the reason is that you're holding all these emotions inside, or you're preventing yourself from actually experiencing them so that it gets held in your bodies. When emotions are really, really tense and we don't know how to deal with them, they have to be processed somewhere. Or you find it hard to focus on simple things or everyday activities and tasks. There might be moments where you're withdrawing from family and friends, especially if they don't really know how to hold that space for you. You might feel like an anomaly. Maybe you have a sad cloud around you, even during like times are actually okay. Like times are good. You know, I don't like using the word good or bad, but maybe you have feelings of despair and you're feeling powerless. Have you experienced any of those signs? Well, to be human is to go through those at some point, but it does not have to completely derail your life. It doesn't have to be your narrative. And you can move away from that state of being to feeling less to little of those negative emotions that I just mentioned. Emotions require a level of vulnerability that if you shy away from will actually backfire. With that vulnerability comes being able to gain mastery over your emotions, mastery over yourself. An understanding of the root causes can help change your coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms simply means changing the way that you process, manage, and respond to what's happening within you in healthier ways. When we're emotionally overwhelmed by things, we often try to suppress them or change them to a feeling we might prefer. We deny their existence. You know, we're not being honest with how we truly feel inside. We may shift the emotion over to someone else, otherwise known as projection. You know, maybe I'm mad at something, but I'm blaming someone else for it. Emotions aren't meant to overwhelm us. I have to say it again and again. They are our teachers. They're not supposed to be too much or even just right. Emotions are their own language that we all speak and understand differently. Imagine being able to shift the way you feel after a few minutes of that intense emotional state. What would that do for your life? And you can with just a few strategies. So grab a pen and paper. You know what time it is. It's time to take some notes. All right. First strategy, get curious about your emotions. We often don't even want to like look at them. You know, when you're feeling intense emotions, sit with it for the moment and get curious about how it feels, where you feel it, When do you usually feel this or these emotions? As much as you want to, do not run away from them. I suggest keeping a journal and keeping track of these emotions so you can increase your self-awareness of them. For example, I was noticing a bit of irritability after I got off of Instagram. So instead of continuing to engage in that trigger, I reduced the amount of time I spent on that channel, which reduced the irritable feelings I was experiencing, and I started to feel a bit better. So remember, you have the power to make changes and edits in your life throughout the day, moment to moment. Number 2, thoughts play an important role in coping with overwhelming emotions. Jot down what thoughts are coming up for you in the moment that's attached to that feeling. You can watch my Stop Overthinking video and download the worksheet to help you interrupt negative thoughts. It'll teach you how to do that. So after you write them down, notice any patterns. What are you saying in your head? Then say them out loud and feel how your body reacts to them. I know you're like, feel, I'm trying not to feel, but that's impossible. Okay. I'm just going to let you know right now, just stop it. Stop doing that. When you train yourself to not feel, it brings about a whole host of other complications. All right. So number 3, next, I want you to surrender. The reason it's hard to surrender in most cases because we wish something was different than the actual reality. I didn't put this first, although technically that's usually the first step. But because most of us have been intellectually trained to manage the things around us in like a very scientific way, or we've been trained to not deal with them, surrendering seems like a very elusive concept. But there are moments when logic helps, especially for feelings of anxiety and also depression, and even now in this moment, working through intense emotions. But allow yourself to feel everything and allow yourself the process it takes to go through that experience. But I will recommend, one of my coaches would say, if you're having a pity party, put a timer on it for like 10, 15 minutes, go ahead and have your pity party. When the timer goes off, stop and move on. All right, so number 4, reshape your narrative and rethink how you see emotions. Embrace your emotions and understand that they aren't here to harm you, but provide you again with feedback, lessons, and also to remind you that you're an emotive human being, which is beautiful. It's beautiful to have emotions. Here's the thing about emotions. It means to stir up, to move through. The fact that you're feeling something, that's amazing. Because some of us struggle with feeling anything at all. But if you don't allow these emotions to pass, your body will hold on to them. And it will turn into sickness, stress, and cause further complications. All right, number 5, I also suggest rate your emotions. How do you know that you're moving through an emotion when it's becoming less and less intense? How I know I'm moving through a certain emotion is when it's not so intense anymore, right? If I used to be at a 10, but maybe by implementing these strategies, I find myself at like a 5 or even a 2. So it's important to assess your growth and do some self-reflective exercises. All right, number 6, one thing I learned during grad school, which I totally forgot about, but it's an acronym called HALT, which is very helpful on this self-awareness journey. And as you get to know more of yourself, it's so important to use strategies like this so that it sends signals to your brain so that you can pause and have a moment to respond versus responding without thinking, right? And I hope you're taking notes because I know I'm giving you a lot of information. So the acronym HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So ask yourself, am I hungry in this moment? Am I angry? Am I feeling lonely? Am I tired? This is a quick way to really pull yourself out of that intense feeling. Because if we're feeling any of these feelings, then that could be a reason for our intense emotions, agitation or for us overreacting to something in the moment. If I'm angry, I don't want to talk to nobody. I want to eat. Okay. If I'm really tired, it's going to be hard for me to tame my emotions. And that's another thing. It's so important for you to get rest because I'm grumpy when I don't get enough sleep. So make sure you get enough rest. Again, make sure that you're writing these down and taking lots and lots of notes because changing your life doesn't just fall on your lap. It takes a proactive daily practice of self-awareness and self-reflection. All right, so number 7, ask yourself the following questions to check the facts of what's going on in your life So you can also think more clearly when you find yourself overreacting. First question, what event triggered this emotion? Like what was going on that like led to this feeling? And then what are my interpretations or assumptions am I making about this situation? And then does my emotion and its intensity match the facts of the situation? Or does it just match my assumptions of the situation? Sometimes what feels like a really big deal might not feel like a big deal after you think it through a little bit. And this inadvertently helps you to reduce the intensity of these extreme emotions because you're going to put a little logic behind it. You're going to challenge it. You're going to challenge your thoughts. You're going to take a look at the situation, and that'll help shift things for you. And lastly, pay attention to more of the positive things that are going on in your life that can help change the way you feel and look at things over time. We're so wired to look at the negative, to focus on the bad, that we can't even hear when someone gives us like 10 compliments. You know, the minute we hear like that negative, that criticism is a wrap, right? We throw all those compliments, all that positive stuff in the trash, and we don't even focus on it. We zero in on the negative. So add more positive experiences by looking for them around in your life. Write them down if you have to kind of retrain your brain to see them. You know, did someone hold the door open for you? You know, was someone showed you an act of kindness? Did you show an act of kindness? Like it might seem small, but these are powerful game changers for altering your brain, ultimately altering your thoughts and your feelings. Okay, that's all I have for you for today. Again, we went through a lot. We talked about emotions. We talked about where they came from. We talked about what are the signs, like how to recognize them. And then I took you through a bunch of strategies to be able to challenge some of the emotions that you're having, challenge the thoughts, and also come to a state where you're not, you know, easily rattled by the things that are happening around you. And when you're feeling those intense emotions, you'll know exactly what to do. So if this video was helpful for you, I just got a favor to ask. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone you think could use it. I'll see y'all in the next video.